Tantor Audio presents The Small Big, Small Changes That Spark Big Influence by Steve J. Martin, Noah J. Goldstein, and Robert B. Cialdini. Narrated by Mike Chamberlain. Introduction. Britney Spears hit the headlines for hers. So did the actors Gerard Depardieu and Lindsay Lohan. But celebrity no-shows aren't just limited to court appearances, or more accurately, non-appearances. Some celebrities even let down their own fans. The British rock band Oasis earned a reputation for being somewhat less than reliable when it came to showtime. And the U.S. country and western singer George Jones failed to show up to his concerts on such a regular basis that for years he was known to fans as No-Show Jones. Unlike these headline grabbers, the no-shows in everyday life don't get much attention. A diner fails to honor a restaurant booking, a citizen misses jury service, a meeting slips the mind of a busy executive, a friend forgets to meet for coffee, or a patient fails to show up for a medical appointment. Viewed in isolation, these missed appointments don't seem that costly. But every year, millions of business meetings, hairdresser appointments, restaurant reservations, sales presentations, and student tutorials are missed. And when scaled up, these small lapses can have an enormous financial impact. Take someone who fails to show up for a medical appointment. At first glance, it's no big deal. One could easily imagine a busy, overloaded physician viewing a patient no-show as a rare opportunity to catch up on paperwork, make a few calls, or take a short break. But when such incidents become regular occurrences, the cumulative impact of inefficiency, lost income, and sunken costs can be huge. In the United Kingdom, no-shows are estimated to cost the National Health Service some £800 million every year. In the United States, some healthcare economists estimate that no-shows create billions of dollars in losses. In the hospitality industry, when patrons fail to show up for their reservations, restaurants can experience a decline in revenues, dwindling profits, and, if the no-show numbers go uncorrected, even closure. Other businesses suffer when costly meetings need to be rescheduled because an individual crucial to the decision-making process fails to arrive, or because potential clients who accepted an invitation to a sales presentation, trade show, or convention turn out to be no-shows. So what can be done? Fortunately, when it comes to persuading people to keep their appointments and, more generally, to live up to their commitments, small changes can have a big impact. In a recent study that we carried out in health centers, we implemented 2 small changes that resulted in a significant reduction in no-shows. Both changes were costless to implement, but their financial impact could be huge, potentially enabling the healthcare providers concerned to save tens of millions of dollars every year. We will describe what those 2 small changes were in one of the chapters that follows, Chapter 8 if you can't wait. But it is important to recognize that persuading someone to keep an appointment is just a single example of an influence challenge. There are hundreds of things we need to persuade others to do in lots of different situations and environments. Regardless of who we need to persuade, what we will consistently reveal throughout this book is a simple truth. When it comes to influencing the behaviors of others, it is often the smallest changes in approach that make the biggest differences. This is a book about how to influence and persuade others in effective and ethical ways. It offers usable information about lots of small but key changes, more than 50 in fact, that you can employ immediately. Importantly, within the chapters that follow, we won't rely on hunches or guesses to identify which particular changes might bring about significantly transformed responses. Instead, we will offer evidence based on a large body of persuasion science to show you precisely which small changes can bring about big effects across a wide range of situations. Over 30 years ago, one of us, Robert Cialdini, published Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. That book described the 6 universal principles of persuasion, identified from a review of the available scientific evidence at the time and from Cialdini's own comprehensive 3-year field study. Since then, researchers have confirmed these 6 principles, and practitioners in all sorts of fields continue to put them to use. They are reciprocity. People feel obligated to return favors performed for them. Authority. People look to experts to show them the way. Scarcity. The less available the resource, the more people want it. Liking. The more that people like others, the more they want to say yes to them. Consistency. People want to act consistently with their commitments and values. And social proof. People look to what others do in order to guide their own behavior. In our follow-up book, Yes, 50 Scientifically Proven Ways to Be Persuasive, we offered updated and specific advice about how to employ these principles, as well as numerous other strategies informed by persuasion science. But science rarely stops to take a breath. Over the last few years, more and more research from fields such as neuroscience, cognitive psychology, social psychology, and behavioral economics has helped to uncover an even greater understanding of how influence, persuasion, and behavior change happen. In this new book, we'll review more than 50 of these new insights and ideas, with the majority drawn from research conducted over the last few years. We'll cover how you can practically apply each idea or insight across a range of contexts, in business and workplace settings with colleagues, clients, and coworkers, at home with your friends and neighbors, and in a host of other common interactions you may encounter. We will also discuss how to apply these ideas in many common situations, such as face-to-face interactions, group meetings, telephone conversations, email exchanges, and online or social media networks. In addition to mining insights from the latest persuasion science, there is something else new about the material in this book. Its focus on the theme of small changes that lead to big effects. For the first time, we'll be considering how to influence and persuade others in entirely ethical ways by considering only the smallest changes that are likely to lead to the biggest effects. We call this type of change a small big. We think that this focus on scientifically informed, small yet high-impact changes is critically important because the approach that people typically use to persuade others is becoming increasingly ineffective. Most people believe that when making decisions, they consider all the available information at their disposal and come to an informed decision about the right course of action. No surprise, then, that they believe the same must be true for others, and that the best way to persuade people is to provide them with all the available information and a rationale for why they should pay attention to it. For example, a medical doctor, on diagnosing one of her patients with a long-term illness, which, although not trivial, is eminently treatable, may present that patient with information about what has caused the condition, its etiology, and the prognosis, before suggesting a number of steps to manage the condition, such as making dietary changes and taking prescribed medicines at the right time and dosage. An IT director who is becoming increasingly frustrated by the growing number of employees downloading unauthorized software onto company computers might send out a communication to his employees describing, at length, the potential implications of their actions and the reasons why they are considered infringements of company policy. It's not just physicians and IT directors who attempt to inform people into a desirable change. We all do it. Want to persuade that new client that your product is more effective than your competitors and therefore warrants that 20% price premium? Then provide a body of additional information and rebuttals that support your claims. Want to convince your team that your latest change program is different from the dozen or so you have rolled out in the past? Then provide lots of reasons and show them how everyone will benefit this time around. Want to persuade your clients to sign up to your company's stock market investment plan? Then carefully walk them through a highly technical analysis of your company's investment history, ensuring that you highlight the most impressive results. Want to get your kids to do their homework and go to bed on time? Then tell them about studies showing how doing homework increases their chances of getting into an Ivy League school. And maybe follow up with some research results on the beneficial effects of sleep. Yet the latest persuasion science research reveals an often overlooked insight that goes a long way to explaining why strategies that simply attempt to inform people into making a change carry a high likelihood of failure. In short, it is not information per se that leads people to make decisions, but the context in which that information is presented. We are living in the single most information-overloaded, stimulation-saturated environment that has ever existed. People just don't have the capacity to fully consider every piece of information in their time-scarce, attention-challenged, busy lives. Successful influence is increasingly governed by context rather than cognition, and by the psychological environment in which such information is presented. As a result, anyone can significantly increase their ability to influence and persuade others by not only attempting to inform or educate people into change, but also by simply making small shifts in their approach to link their message to deeply felt human motivations. A small change in the setting, framing, timing, or context of how information is conveyed can dramatically alter how it is received and acted upon. As behavioral scientists who study both the theory and practice of influence and persuasion, we are constantly fascinated by not only how breathtakingly slight the changes to a communicator's message can be that spawn enormous effects, but also how rarely those changes require large investments in time, effort, or money. Throughout this book, we will be careful to pinpoint which small changes to make, and how to employ them strategically and ethically so that you can produce big differences in your ability to influence others without resorting to costly financial levers, incentives, discounts, rebates, penalties, etc., or using up valuable time and resources. We will also point to a number of mysteries and pose a series of questions that can be explained by a better understanding of persuasion science. For example, what small alteration can you make to an email that could make your business partners easier to negotiate with? What can hurricanes, 99-cent price endings, and frozen yogurt teach you about other small changes that can lead to effective persuasion? What small changes in approach can help you to host more productive meetings? And what small, costless shift in language can motivate others, and yourself for that matter, to complete a goal such as achieving a sales target, losing weight, taking up a new hobby, or getting your kids to complete their homework? It is perhaps easy in today's fast-paced, data-rich world where information updates are immediately available at the click of a button or the swipe of a screen, to dismiss the importance of small changes in the context of that information. But to do so would be a mistake. While there can be no doubt that new technologies and instantly accessible information have brought us wonderful benefits, the cognitive hardware that we use to process that information has remained largely unchanged for centuries. Ironically, as the amount of information we have at our disposal to make better decisions increases, the less likely we are to use all of that information when we do have to decide. People today are just as likely to be influenced by small changes in communication context as were our ancestors from hundreds or thousands of years ago. When it comes to influencing and persuading others in ethical and effective ways, small is very much the new big. As you will begin to see in the chapters that follow, by simply incorporating small, scientifically informed changes into a persuasive appeal, the impact can be great. So let's begin our journey into this new science of persuasion by showing how small changes in the wording of a letter persuaded thousands of citizens to take action and pay the taxes they owed, earning the relevant government office hundreds of millions of pounds in additional revenues. Then, let's consider the implications for your own persuasive efforts. Steve J. Martin, Noah J. Goldstein, and Robert B. Cialdini. Chapter 1. What small big can persuade people to pay their taxes on time? Like tax collectors in a lot of countries, officials in Britain's Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, HMRC, had a problem. Too many citizens weren't submitting their tax returns and paying what they owed on time. For many years, officials at HMRC had created a variety of letters and communications targeted at late payers. The majority of these approaches focused on the various consequences that late payers would face if they failed to respond and pay on time: interest charges, late fees, and legal action. For some folks, these traditional approaches worked well, but for many others, they did not. So in early 2009, in consultation with our company, Influence at Work, HMRC decided to try an alternative approach informed by persuasion science. All it involved was one small change: a single sentence added to their standard letter. This small change was remarkable not only for its simplicity, but also for the huge difference it made in response rates. The new letters led to the collection of $560 million of the £650 million debt that was the focus of the pilot studies, representing a clearance rate of 86%. To put this into perspective, the previous year, HMRC had collected $290 million of a possible £510 million, a clearance rate of just 57%. Overall, the new letters, combined with other best practices informed from the private collections industry, contributed to the collection of £5.6 billion more overdue revenue than had been collected the previous year. Additionally, HMRC reduced the amount of debt on its books by £3.5 billion. Considering how small and cost-effective the actual changes were, the overall impact is nothing short of astonishing. So what exactly was this small change to the letter? We simply and truthfully informed the recipients of the large number of citizens who actually do pay their taxes on time. But why would so many thousands of people feel compelled to mail in their checks on the basis of such a small change to a standard letter? The answer lies in a fundamental principle of human behavior that scientists call social proof, the evidence of the crowd. It means that people's behavior is largely shaped by the behaviors of others around them, especially those with whom they strongly identify. Researchers have been studying the phenomenon for decades, and it's not only humans that are influenced by its immense power. Birds flock, cattle herd, fish school, social insects swarm. So fundamental is the draw of what others are doing that even organisms without a brain cortex are subject to its force. The concept of social proof may not be new, but we are learning more about its impact and how best to employ it all the time. That a context of consensus will frequently trump effortful cognition could be seen both as worrying as well as comforting to people. We worry about being seen as lemming-like, of submitting total control over our decisions to the crowd. Yet we can also take comfort because such conformity mostly leads us to the right decisions. Following the crowd is not an action that is simply fueled by a need to keep up with the Joneses. It is more fundamental than that, striking at the heart of three simple yet powerful underlying human motivations: the motivation to make accurate decisions as efficiently as possible, the motivation to affiliate with and to gain the approval of others, and the motivation to see oneself in a positive light. The seemingly small change made to the UK tax letters led to such huge differences because it was able to pull on each of these three motivations at the same time. In the context of a busy, overloaded life, doing what most others are doing can be a remarkably efficient shortcut to a good decision, regardless of whether that decision concerns which movie to watch, which restaurant to frequent, or in the case of the UK's HMRC, whether or when to pay your taxes. Drawing attention to the fact that most people do pay taxes on time aligns to a desire to affiliate with others. After all, by following what most people are already doing, there's a good chance that we'll gain their approval and increase the odds of making social connections. Finally, in the particular case of the British citizens receiving the HMRC letter, the third motivation, a desire to see oneself in a positive light, was active too. Most people probably don't take pride in being a deadbeat. It's certainly easier to be a leech on society if one believes that everyone else is a leech too. But in learning that so many British citizens do pay their taxes on time, those few who don't will feel more like freeloaders. In the face of that information, following the majority by paying one's taxes helped restore one's self-image as an individual who does their fair share. Given how powerful the concept of social proof can be, it is surprising how largely dismissive people are about its powerful effect on them. In one set of studies that two of us conducted with behavioral scientists Jessica Nolan, Wes Schultz, and Vladis Grieskevicius, we asked several hundred homeowners in California to report on the extent to which they believed 4 different potential reasons for conserving energy actually influenced their decisions to try to reduce their overall home energy consumption. The 4 potential reasons were: 1. Conserving energy helps the environment. 2. Conserving energy protects future generations. 3. Conserving energy saves them money. 4. Many of their neighbors are already conserving energy. The homeowners resoundingly rated conserving energy because many of their neighbors are already doing so as having the least influence on their own behavior. Armed with this information, we then conducted an experiment in a Southern California neighborhood, randomly assigning homes to display one of 4 signs on their front doors, each employing one of the 4 reasons I've listed. Some residents were reminded of how much conserving saves the environment, others how conserving protects future generations, and yet others how much money they could save by conserving. Finally, a 4th group of residents was informed of findings from a recent survey indicating that the majority of their neighbors were actively trying to conserve energy. When we measured their energy usage nearly a month later, we discovered that the social proof communication was the single most effective message when it came to actually changing their behavior, even though a majority of respondents in the earlier study had rejected it as having any sway. Interestingly, the majority of people in the earlier study thought that the most influential reason to conserve energy was that it protects the environment. But in fact, in the second study, that environmental message hardly affected energy usage at all. The truth is, not only are people pretty poor at recognizing what will influence their future behavior, it turns out that they are also not that well attuned to what persuaded them after the event either. As part of a TV news magazine program, one of us was asked to assist with a segment of the show that sought to identify the reasons why people might be persuaded to help others in a series of everyday, non-emergency settings. At a busy New York City subway station, we hired researchers to count the number of commuters who donated to a street musician as they walked past. After a short time, a small change was made to the situation that had an immediate and impressive impact. Just before an approaching and unsuspecting commuter reached the musician, another person, who was in on the act, would drop a few coins into the musician's hat in view of the approaching commuter. The result? An 8-fold increase in the number of commuters who chose to make a donation. In a series of post-study interviews with commuters who did donate, every one of them failed to attribute their action to the fact that they had just seen someone else give money first. Instead, they provided alternative justifications. I liked the song he was playing. I'm a generous person, and I felt sorry for the guy. That people are generally poor at recognizing the factors that influence their behaviors both before and after an event raises an immediate implication for any business or organization that invests time, effort, and often considerable dollars asking their customers and clients what actually drives their buying decisions and behaviors. Although we are confident that many customers will happily provide answers, we are less confident that the answers they provide will be an accurate reflection of what happens in reality, resulting in marketing strategies based on those answers having high failure rates. So rather than basing your influence strategies on what people say will influence their decisions, one small change that you can make immediately is to simply and honestly depict what the majority of others who are similar to your target audience are already doing that you would like your audience to do too. For example, a business development executive seeking to attract customers to a presentation about a new product could increase attendance by first inviting those who will be most likely to attend. Then the executive could honestly point out to his next group of targets that many other people have already accepted our invitation to attend. This small shift can be very effective even if those targets have previously stated that attendance by others will have no influence over their own decisions to attend. Social proof appeals can be further enhanced by applying one other insight gleaned from the UK tax letter studies: adding extra specificity. Some letters highlighted not just the number of people nationally who paid their taxes on time, but also the percentage of people who lived in the same zip code as the letter recipient. This approach yielded a response rate of 79% compared to a typical response rate of 67% to the standard letters. Of course, it's not just governments and tax officials who can benefit from the application of these insights. Most businesses and organizations, from global powerhouses to local housing associations, have a need to collect funds from customers and clients in a timely fashion. Where evidence exists that the majority of customers and clients do pay on time, our recommendation is to present such salient information on invoices and statements. Although it is unlikely that this small change alone will influence everyone to pay on time, it should certainly improve payment rates, freeing up organizational resources to target the minority who actively avoid paying on time or even evade making payments entirely. Notice, too, the importance of focusing your audience's attention on behaviors that are both frequently adopted and desirable. In a study that one of us led with physicians Suraj Basi and Rupert Dunbar-Rees, we found that health centers that prominently published the number of people who failed to attend a health appointment the previous month typically saw an increase in no-shows the following month. As we mentioned in our introduction, the cost of no-shows can lead to huge losses and inefficiencies, not just in health centers, but in all types of business and public sector settings. So a small and costless change, such as focusing on desirable behaviors, can make an extraordinary difference. Of course, a strategy of highlighting how many people are carrying out desirable behaviors, such as paying taxes, keeping appointments, or doing homework assignments on time, won't be so successful if the behavior or change you are trying to effect isn't already practiced by a majority of people. In such cases, as tempting as it might be to simply invent a majority, we would strongly urge against such an idea. Not only would this be unethical, but should it be discovered that your social proof appeal was manufactured, any future influence attempts you make will, at best, struggle for credibility, and, at worst, simply become toxic. However, there are alternatives. In fact, two specific approaches can be quite effective. The first is to highlight behaviors that are largely approved of in a given situation. Behavioral scientists label what most others disapprove in a situation the injunctive norm. For example, highlighting survey results that have found that a majority of people support a particular cause can play an important role in helping to shape future change. 80% of California residents believe it is important that they play their part in energy-saving programs, and 9 out of 10 employees said they would be interested in learning more about how to lead a healthier lifestyle. In such instances, the small big would be for a communicator to make such injunctive norms part of their message strategy. It can also be effective to publish absolute numbers that suggest the widespread adoption of an idea or behavior. O-Power is an Arlington, Virginia-based company that provides energy reports that encourage homeowners to save energy. On its website, O-Power honestly publicizes that its programs have helped people save over...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?